Hi, it's Joanne Moffett, and I'm here today to talk with you about proactive problem solving with kids, the collaborative proactive solution model, which is the model that psychologist Ross Greene from Harvard University, um, he proposes that we try to use. So let's look at it. The goals today, we're going to look at proactive versus reactive problem solving. We're going to look at expectations, behaviors, the CPS or Collaborative Proactive Solution Model, the foundation, underlying assumptions. We're going to break down collaborative, proactive, and solutions with specific focus on what Dr. Greene refers to as Plan B. There's 3 plans, and we'll talk about that for a quick minute. And we're going to talk about practical use. So here we go. The first thing we want to look at is behavior. And with behavior, we want to think about what we can do proactively versus reactively. So when you think about behavior, you focus more on what happens when it's unexpected, because we have a bigger reaction to that. We have a bigger feeling to unexpected behavior. When a kid isn't doing what they're supposed to do, they're maybe not being safe, or they're not learning, or they're interrupting the learning of others, then that hits us and that stays with us. That's bigger for us. For the kid that's doing the expected stuff, we're just pleased, and it doesn't stay with us as long. We don't think about all those kids that were doing what they were supposed to do, or playing as they were supposed to play, or sitting on the bus as they were supposed to be. We think about the kids that were doing what was unexpected. So with unexpected, we want to look at patterns of behavior versus isolated incidents. And the reason is that everybody may have a bad day and may yell, for example, if something is bothering them once. But when it's consistent, then we want to begin to look at, are we going to react to this in a reactive model, or are we going to look at this in a proactive manner? And proactive is when we're making a plan for that unexpected behavior, and we're doing it with the kid when they're calm, when they're thinking clearly, when they're in what we call that green zone. Reactive is when there's an immediate need for safety and the immediate need to create a calm, to have a calm in that storm. It's usually a temporary fix, because typically when it's a reactive solution, it's one that the adult is planning and the adult is in charge of, and the kid isn't learning from. So let's look at this, the expectations and what expectations are, and the reactions to expectations. So there are expectations for all of us in work and in school. For our kids in school, expectations typically are with rules, and we have rules for the whole school-wide, and we have rules in the classroom. And the expectations typically revolve around being safe, responsible, and respectful. There's expectations for learning with academics, as well as with social, and how we're supposed to act in a social situation. Remember, a classroom, even if you're not talking, you're still social because you're with others. Now, the reactions around the expectations, we have actions because of the expectations. Those are reactions. And a stress reaction, according to Lazarus and Folkman, is when the demands of the environment are greater than the individual's ability to manage them. Think of your own reactions when it's a stressful situation, when the demands of the environment are greater than what you feel you can manage. What do? Do you yell, which is a fight response? Do you freeze up and just can't think? Do you move away from the situation, which is a flight response? The reactions are based on those demands that we have to the expectations. The expectations are the demands, right? So when we have the reactions, they are with the 3 F's, the fight, flight, and freeze. So let's look at that in a little more depth. Fight is the hitting, the spitting, the biting, whining, screaming, swearing. Flight may include withdrawing or running, and freeze can also be withdrawing, but can also be pouting, crying, just sulking. Now, let's look at why this happens.
Have you run away from a saber-toothed tiger recently? Maybe you haven't, but the stress response you feel when you are late to work or the growl your stomach makes when you haven't had anything but an energy bar and coffee in the morning is the same stress response we had when we were cavemen. That stress response is called fight or flight. Grunk is a real-life caveman. He goes to work hunting saber-tooths and rabbits for his family. Unfortunately, the saber-tooth chases Grunk on occasion, and his physical and emotional stress levels go way up. When this happens, Grunk's body's intelligence kicks in to help him escape. His heart rate goes way up, his blood pressure spikes, more adrenaline is produced, and the body moves the blood away from the digestive tract and into the muscles, as digesting food isn't a priority at that moment. Grunk eventually does escape and rests at home, and after 15 to 20 minutes, his body resets and begins to operate normally again. Now, your body doesn't know the difference between running from a saber-toothed tiger or rushing your kids to school. Your body's stress response is triggered in both situations, so your blood pressure, heart rate, and food digestion is the same as Grunk's when he's running away from a tiger. These types of situations could happen every day in our culture. The difference between you and the caveman is the caveman was able to relax in his cave soon after he finished stressing out. So for the whole day, the caveman would stress the duration of a hunt, which would last maybe an hour. You, on the other hand, have to deal with the stress of racing your kids to school, traffic, work, relationships, and everything else that life constantly throws at you. Plus, add in the constant chemical stress that comes from the unhealthy foods we eat, and it's like you are running from the saber-tooth all day long. The solution is to build your own cave. You have to build your own cave every day, and it means finding some peace in the pileup of traffic while driving to work. It means going to bed on time instead of staying up late binging on your favorite TV shows. It means taking some time to go outside and do some relaxing work instead of locking yourself up in your office. Otherwise, this chronic stress will open you up to most diseases because your immune system will tank and a lack of nutrients that your body needs due to not being able to digest your food properly. Add to that the fact that your adrenals, which are the glands that sit atop your kidney and decide where your hormones go, are so active with the abundance of stress you experience and put into your body, you will develop adrenal fatigue. Put all this together, and now you know why stress is the start of all disease processes. How can we make our fight or flight more effective? How can we turn it off when we don't need it and bring it up when it's necessary? Ask yourself what you are putting in your body for energy. Your body is probably asking your brain for those artificial stimulants you gave it, like coffee, processed sugars, or genetically modified foods, because it's confused on why the adrenals aren't filling up like they used to. You have sucked your adrenals dry of hormones that didn't need to be active in the first place. That's huge because we are taking a finite source and sucking it dry. What people may not know is that a lot of things trigger the fight or flight response. Emotional stresses, eating unhealthy foods, overreacting to life's daily challenges, going through tough emotional times, all trigger fight or flight. However, that leaves a lot of areas where we can improve it. So if this video has successfully stressed you out with all the info it's loaded you up with, you should take a minute to relax. At least you don't have a tiger running after you. If you always put limit on everything you do, physical or anything else, it will spread into your work and into your life. There are no limits. There are only plateaus. And you must not stay there. You must go beyond them. Bruce Lee. Have you run away from a saber-tooth?
So, the piece here about the saber-toothed tiger and all that, it's really about the saber-toothed tiger for our kids sometimes is the inability to do the expected behavior or the expectation or what's being asked of them. So really it comes back to our brains, and it's an autonomic or automatic reaction that we have. There's a disconnect between the amygdala, which is the part of our brain that wants to provide us with that ability to remove ourselves or deal with an unsafe situation. It's that amygdala is that police officer of the brain saying, hey, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to get you either out of here or get you so that you're going to be able to deal with it. And the problem is that when there is a misperception where that police officer, the brain, is saying, I'll be protecting you, that may be a big reaction to a small problem because we're already, or the kid is already in this high alert, kind of panicky state. They're unable to access, to breathe, get oxygen flowing up to the prefrontal cortex and access that wise leader of the brain that's going to be able to help the kid react to the stress in the environment or to the inability to meet the expected demand. So the CPS model, the collaborative proactive solution model, the foundation is that we focus on the why. So the focus of why is, well, the kid is lagging or lacks skills, and they need those skills. Okay? The focus is on the how. The behavior is being expressed in patterns. So what are the patterns of behavior? Why? They're lacking skills. How? Well, it's through the behavior that we're seeing that. And the focus is on when and why the kid is having difficulty meeting the expectations. And in this model, the unmet expectations, those expectations that they can't do, they're referred to as unmet or unsolved problems. With this model, Dr. Green, he feels that kids do well if they can, right? That's his big premise. Kids do well if they can. Another assumption is the Q-tip. We have to quit taking it personally. When kids aren't doing well, it's not because of you. Don't take it personally. Especially so many of our kids who are lagging in skills and have unsolved problems, meaning that they can't meet the expectations that are being handed over to them. We feel like, well, it's because of something we've said or done, and so often it's just the unsolved problem and lagging in skill. An assumption that's very important here is connection. Connections increase self-regulation. They just do. They increase self-regulation in the kids that we're working with. And what does that mean? So when the predictable adults in the kids' lives have actions that are predictable and have consistent paralanguage, meaning that their voice, their facial expression, how they're carrying themselves, how they're interacting with the kids, when it all is in sync, when they're showing empathy and compassion, those connections are what increases the kid's ability to regulate, and then the ability for the kid to be in a green, calm state, and the kid to be able to be proactive with you in making plans for problem solving. Another assumption is that we have to remember that all kids want and need to feel in control. They all want that. They all need that. Another assumption is that in this model, in any problem-solving model, you have to be present, really totally present with the kid, and patient. If you give up, kids will go back to what they know. They'll go back to the behavior that they know, which is not a functional behavior, but it's their way of managing their lack of skill with the unsolved problem. Okay. So if you give up, like you don't have the energy this day to be doing the steps that you've come to agree on with the kid, then that kid is going to fly off the handle and be on top of the desk again or under the seat. Okay. And another underlying assumption is that you have to maintain your expectations with questions. Are these the right expectations? You have to be looking at that. Always have expectations, but remember, not one size fits all. So you have to be looking at seeing if you have to differentiate or make those expectations different based on the student's needs and preferences. So when we look at the model, we have the assumptions. Now we're looking at the model. Let's look at the word collaborative. Collaborative, proactive solutions. Let's look at collaborative. Collaborative is working together. So when we're working together with kids, we want to remember that when you're collaborating, you're non-punitive, non-judgmental, non-adversarial, because the goal is to decrease the conflict, right? And by decreasing conflict, you're increasing everything else. You're increasing relationship, you're increasing communication, you're increasing students' developmental capacities and skills and empathy and perspective taking and problem solving, all those things that are the executive functioning parts of our brain. You're working on strengthening those for our kids. And think about that with anybody, right? Like if you take kids out of the equation and you had to collaborate with someone that you don't particularly like on a work project, you're going to collaborate in the same way. You're not going to be punitive. You're not going to be judgmental. You're not going to be adversarial. You don't want conflict. You want to increase your relationship. Well, it's the same with kids. Very same thing with kids. So the next piece of collaborative proactive solutions is the proactive part. You want to be ready before the event. So you're going to identify the skills a kid is lagging. You're going to ask, what expectation is the kid having difficulty meeting? What's happening here? What can't he or she do? You're going to notice incompatibility episodes. So these happen when there's incompatibility between a kid's skill, what they're able to do, and the demands and expectations that are around them. Okay, and that results in an episode when those when there's a disconnect between a kid's ability to do something and the expectation and demands that are placed on them, then there'll be an episode. So, collaborative, working together, proactive, being ready before the event. Well, how are you going to do that? So, Dr. Green has something called the ALSUP, which is the Assessment of Lagging Skills and Unsolved Problems. Now, not all of us can walk around doing an ALSUP because it takes some time, but it is a guide if you wanted to reference it, and it's on Dr. Green's website of livesinthebalance.org. This is what it looks like. I have one here as well. Okay, I pulled it right off the website. And for example, on the lagging skill side is difficulty maintaining focus. Okay, which is right around here. And so the unsolved problem first would be can't sit still. Kids can't sit still, and so that is the unsolved problem. Another unsolved problem may be daily outburst at recess. Okay, so that might be this one: chronic inability and or anxiety significantly impedes capacity for problem solving or heightens frustration. Another unsolved problem might be, for you bus drivers that might be taking this class, is disruption on the bus. So you look down here, disruption on the bus. That might be difficulty attending to or accurately interpreting social cues, poor perception of social nuances. So it just gives you a general idea when there is an unsolved problem on the right. Those are those expectations, unsolved expectations that the kid doesn't have the skills for. So the skills on the left are noted, and just gives you some ideas of why they're doing what they're doing. So collaborative, proactive solutions. There's 3 kinds of solutions in this model. The first one is Plan A, which is the adult imposed. And that is the might makes right. For regulated, as Dr. Green frames it, for regulated kids, like kids that are, your typical kids that don't have significant incompatibility episodes, as he just referred to, for those kids, might makes right A, that's something that happens quickly and it's fine. They can roll with that, But for those kids who have these episodes on a regular basis, those dysregulated kids, it can result in control issues and challenging behavior, right? So example could be the kid who has a chronic hard time online, kicking and hitting other kids near him. And the adult imposed Plan A would be you can't walk without hurting others, so you're going to walk with me. Okay. Now, there's not a lot of learning that goes with that, although it's solving the problem, right? For that particular moment. The collaborative Plan B, there's student investment, and over time, kids will develop ways or skills of coping. They'll develop skills or ways of coping so that they don't they're able to manage what they can't do so much. So if it's online situation, they may learn how to manage their body online. If it is in the classroom and they're trying to learn how to do something, it may be just learning how to ask for help. Okay, that's what some of our kids don't know how to do. And then the third plan, which is the solution that is noted, is Plan C. And that's where we drop the expectation for now. And that could be that you're going to get back to it. You just can't do everything at once. So if you have a kid who has many needs, you're going to take the highest need first. So if a kid is having trouble making at recess and feels that everybody's making fun of him at recess, and is also having trouble getting to school, and is also having trouble communicating his needs because he has a severe speech problem, and this is a true kid that I worked with, I'm not going to deal with the kids at recess making fun of him or the communicating his needs until I get him to school every day. So first, we're going to work on the collaborative proactive solutions model I did with this kid, was creating a plan, figuring out what was the skill that he was lagging in order to get him into school every day. And then we could work on communicating his needs. And then we could work on his communication with friends at recess and in the classroom in collaborative groups, and how he could not feel like nobody wanted to be around him. You see, so Plan C is an effective plan because you can get to everything. You just can't do everything at once. So Plan B ingredients. So pretend you're like making a cake and you're looking at a recipe. So you have steps and then you have some guides, right? So the steps for Plan B, first there's empathy, where you're hearing the kid's perspective. Then there's defining the problem, and that's where you enter in your perspective, the adult perspective. And then the third is the invitation, which is the collaborative part, where the adult and the kid brainstorm solutions together. So you follow this recipe with understanding that this is not a quick fix. Remember, this is a skills deficit orientation, and building skills takes time. Lagging skills can include cognitive, right? Like the ability to do numbers, for example, the ability to write down notes from a board. It could include executive functioning. It could be that planning piece. It could be the focusing. It could be the social adaptive, the regulation part of all of this, and being able to be with others and have perspective taking and managing your emotions. The key ingredient for all of us is to remain neutral, as this prevents kids from shutting down. Remember what we said before, an assumption. You have to be coming across authentically, and you have to have that good paralanguage, and not be in a place of giving a lecture or showing anger, because if you're not neutral, the kid will shut down. They'll get into that fight, flight, freeze thing, okay? That primitive response, because it's automatic, it's autonomic. They're going to perceive that you're not on their side. We have to allow kids to talk. And so in order to do that, we have to allow some silence. Sometimes we have to be quiet enough to allow that silence to happen. And that sometimes is a really hard thing for us. We like to fill the space. And then we have to be able to drill for information, and just stay with that drilling versus grilling. Grilling is more of an interrogation. You don't want to interrogate kids. You just want to keep having that conversation go. You're going to drill. So keeping that in mind, our plan B steps, you're going to begin with an introduction. I've noticed that, and end with words like, so what's up? Like, I've noticed that you're having difficulty coming in from recess. What's up? I've noticed that you're having some difficulty completing these word problems. What's up? I've noticed that you're having a hard time turning in your homework. What's up? I've noticed that you've had a lot of absences. What's up? And then you want to move into the steps, which is the empathy. You want to mirror, repeat back what the kids are saying with that reflective listening. You want to clarify, like questions like, how so? Or, what do you mean? Tell me more. Or, I'm a little confused about that. You want to validate. That's hard. Yeah, I understand. You want to ask W questions, such as, who's been giving you a hard time? What's making it hard for you to do that? Where has he been teasing you and when? So you want to break it down. In the midst of all this, you're going to be asking about the kids' thinking. What are you thinking? And before you move, when that happens, and before you move on, you want to summarize. Let me make sure I understand. So what you're saying. So I'm going to just give you an example of the empathy step from Dr. Green's book, Lost and Found, Helping Behaviorally Challenging Students, and while you're at it, others too. So, teacher, here's the introduction. I've noticed that it's been difficult for you to get ready to go home at the end of the school day. What's up? The kid. I don't know. Teacher, do you want to think about it a little? Student. Quiet. Allowing silence. I don't know, really. I don't know. Teacher, would it help if we thought about the different parts of getting ready to go home at the end of the school day? So that's that breaking it down, okay? Student, okay. Teacher, well, first you have to look at your homework sheet so you can figure out what materials you're going to need for homework that night. Is that hard? And the student says, no. And the teacher says, so you're not having difficulty looking at your homework sheet so you can figure out what materials you're going to need for homework that night, right? And he says, no. Okay, the next thing you need is to get all the materials you're going to need into your backpack. Is that hard? Yes. Yeah, that is hard. It is? What's hard about it? So, breaking it down even further. I can't always find everything I'm going to need. And then the teacher says, Well, what is hard about finding everything you need? And the student then says, sometimes I work with Mrs. Cassidy in a different room, and sometimes I leave stuff in her room. And sometimes I'm not sure if the stuff I need is in my locker because I might have left it somewhere else. And sometimes Tim asks if he can borrow my books, and sometimes he doesn't give stuff back. Teacher then says, okay, I think I understand. So you see, it takes a little time, but you're having a conversation and you're working together to figure it out. And you've got somewhere to go. So then you're moving into defining the problem. So you've done the introduction, the empathy with reflective listening and a lot of W questions, and then you're defining the problem. And this is where the adult gets his or her, your ideas on the table. You get your ideas on the table. And your concerns typically center around safety or learning or how the behavior is affecting the student or other people. So, and that's where you might say something like, the thing is, or my concern is. So an example here can be, the thing is, when you come late to class, and this is for a kid, the problem is he's not getting to class on time. So when you come late to class and there's no way I can help you with your math, and then when you come in and you start to do your work and you're behind, what I notice is that you often will distract other kids. That's the thing that I'm concerned about. So kids aren't getting their work done and you're not able to get your work done. Now, if I define that problem like this in a non-neutral way, thing is, when you come late to class, well, there's no way I can help you. And then you're just like bugging other kids and nobody's getting anything done, including you and other kids. Which one is going to bring about a collaborative process? Well, the first one. So the key here is letting your concern be known after the empathy step, but getting your concern out there in a neutral way. So then the third step is that invitation for collaborating, right? And that's where you brainstorm solutions together. And that's the with versus the to. So let's think about how we can work that out. Or let's think about this problem together. Or I wonder if there's a way we can make sure that other kids don't get hurt on the line in from recess, which is, your concern, right? The adult, like, this is for a kid who is hurting other kids online. And you can sometimes be first online, which is what the kid wants. That's why he's hurting other kids. So the practical use with this is that the solutions that you come up with have to be realistic. The solutions have to be mutually satisfactory. That means they're addressing the concern and they're logical. So the solutions, when we say realistic, they've got to be, it can't be something like, well, it would just work out best if I could just go into a different class. That's not a realistic solution. The realistic solutions teach skills, right? Those lagging skills that are needed. And they've got to be mutually satisfactory. So they're a logical solution, and the concern, like safety or getting learning done, or being able to be in a situation where everybody's having good feelings. It's got to be a solution that meets everybody's need. The other piece is that we can't go into this process with kids with what our agenda is. We've got to go in neutrally and hear what the kids' solutions are as well. So it can't just be that I'm going to buy you an alarm clock so that you can use that to get up every day. It's got to be something that the kid is generating his ideas to, otherwise that alarm clock will still go unused. And remember, practical use of this is that you have to practice. It doesn't happen overnight. So you really just want to remember that it takes time. You're great detectives and you notice things all the time. So you're saying what you notice, and then you're going into the problem solving together. The empathy step is reflective listening. You're good at that, asking those W questions. You're identifying the problem and the concern that you have, and then you're brainstorming together some solutions.
I think if you're working with kids in general, but challenging kids in particular, you need a philosophy. Who is this kid? What's he about? What's he up to? If he's up to anything. Because you see, your philosophy is going to guide your actions, especially when the going gets tough. No philosophy, no guide. The most important theme of collaborative problem solving is this one. Kids do well if they can. Now, nobody ever falls off their chair at the sight of kids do well if they can. It's only an earth-shattering philosophy. If you consider a much more popular alternative philosophy that floats around out there called kids do well if they wanna. Now, kids do well if they can, and kids do well if they wanna are two completely different philosophies. And they have completely different ramifications for what you're going to do to or with this kid to make things better. Let's think about kids do well if they wanna for a second. If you've got a kids do well if they wanna mentality and you're working with a kid who's not doing well, then the reason you think he's not doing well by virtue of your philosophy is because he doesn't wanna. I've been thinking about kids do well if they wanna for a long time, and here's the conclusion I've come up with about kids do well if they wanna. It's wrong. Flat out, dead wrong. I ask myself, why would any kid not want to do well? Don't all of us do the best we can in the circumstances we find ourselves in? Well, the kids do well if they want a mentality has those questions covered with concepts like secondary gain, attention seeking, unmotivated, coercive, limit testing. We're going to have those babies put to bed by around 11 a.m. this morning. When you really think about them, they don't make much sense. When you really put them to the test, they don't make a great deal of sense. But let's say they do make sense. Even if kids do well if they wanna is right, and now you know I think it's wrong, it's narrow. Because you see, it greatly narrows the role that you can play in the life of a kid who's not doing well. Because if you think a kid isn't doing well because he doesn't wanna, I can only think of one thing for you to do, only one role for you to play in the life of this kid. Make him wanna. And we have the technology for making kids wanna. How do you make a kid wanna? You reward the behaviors you like and you punish the behaviors you don't. You give him the incentive to do well based on the belief that he didn't have the incentive to do well in the first place. And you are now in the business of making kids wanna. I sure do hope you're right about why he's not doing well. Because if you're wrong and you're busy making a kid wanna, and he already does wanna, you run the risk of making things worse, or at the very least, not being as helpful as you might have wanted to be. I'm a kids do well if they can guy. I think if this kid could do well, he would do well. Something must be getting in his way. Your role just changed. Your role just changed. You've just flipped from thinking a kid isn't doing well because he doesn't wanna, and therefore thinking that your role in the life of this kid is to make him wanna, to something a lot harder, and in my experience, a lot more productive. You've just shifted to kids do well if they can, and what's your main role now? Figure out what's getting in his way. then you can help him. You can't help him if you don't know what's getting in his way. Biggest favor you can do a challenging kid is to finally, at long last, be the person who figures out what's getting in his way. Because you see, if he's still challenging, it's a pretty surefire bet. Nobody's figured it out yet. The key theme of collaborative problem solving, the key philosophy, if you remember nothing else from everything I say, I hope you remember that if this kid could do well, he would do well, because kids do well if they can. I think if you're working with kids,
So, I hope you noticed that the website was there, www.livesinthebalance.org, so you could get more information. And on there, there's a Plan B cheat sheet that you could look at, which is something that everybody could look at every now and again. It just helps you see that this is how you can do this empathy step, define the adult concern step, and then get into the invitation or the problem solving together step, the collaborative problem solving. So, and I think you might have noticed that Dr. Green referred to collaborative problem solving for the CPS model instead of collaborative proactive solutions. So the Lives in the Balance has changed over time, and that video was taken when it was still referred to as collaborative problem solving. So it's collaborative proactive solutions. And what I just have up here is what I mean from my heart. And no matter who you are that's looking at this, problem solving with kids, well, it's really hard, and you have to come to work every day at your best. And parenting, same thing. You have to show up as parents at your best, and we're human. So we recognize the strength and the character and the brave part of who you are. And remember that I love this saying, 100 years from now, it will not matter what my bank account was, the sort of house I lived in, or the kind of car I drove. But the world may be different because I was important in the life of a child. Thanks for watching. Have a really wonderful day.